Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're the place that takes those really big questions, the fundamental ones, and we try to pull out the key info so you can get up to speed fast. Today, we are tackling, honestly, one of the biggest questions for people of faith, like ever. How does God actually talk to us? Like right now, today, we're calling this Deep Dive God's DMs, hearing God's voice today. And I think that whole DM idea, it kind of works, right? Think about your phone for a sec. When your best friend texts you, you just know it's them. You know their vibe, the way they type, the emojis they overuse, maybe even how they sound in your head when you read it. It's just them.
Yeah, exactly. That sense of knowing, that familiarity, that's so important here because, look, if you believe God is real and that he actually wants a relationship with you, which is, a core idea, then it makes sense. His communication would also be real and personal and recognizable. God hasn't suddenly gone silent after thousands of years of communicating. He's definitely not silent now in 2024.
Okay, so our mission today is basically figuring out the settings on our end. How do we receive the message? We're diving into how he actually gets those messages, those DMs, maybe directly to you, and how you can stop just like waiting for some huge sign from the sky and start noticing the everyday stuff.
Right, and it's crucial to get this, being able to recognize his voice isn't some like super spiritual power only for pastors or saints. Jesus himself promised this. If you check out the Bible, John chapter 10, verse 27, he says it plain, "My sheep hear my voice." That's huge. It's a promise about connection. It basically means if you're one of his followers, if you're part of his flock, you already have that link. You have what you need to learn his voice, just like you learn your friend's voice.
Okay, that totally sets us up for our first part, tuning in the subtle signals. Because let's be real, most of us, especially when we're facing big stuff like college choices or friendship drama, we're kind of waiting for the lightning bolt, right? We imagine, the clouds parting, maybe a booming voice like in a movie. I mean, sure, that stuff happened in the Bible sometimes, but
Sure.
are we missing God's messages now because we're only listening for that, like, supernatural megaphone?
I think that's exactly the problem, especially today with all the noise around us, constant notifications, music, everything. He often speaks more quietly, gently, in ways that are super easy to miss if you're not paying attention, maybe looking down at your phone or just distracted. The key isn't really volume. It's being attentive, paying attention.
Okay, let's make this practical. Say you're a teen worried about exams, or maybe dealing with pressure from friends. What does that gentle communication actually look like on a normal Tuesday?
Yeah, good question. It's probably not going to be a memo dropped from heaven. It often looks like maybe three things working together. First, there's that nudge, that gut feeling. Could be like a little warning feeling about a situation, or maybe a sudden feeling of peace about a decision you were agonizing over. It feels different from just, being anxious.
Okay, but wait. How do you tell that apart from just being stressed out? Or maybe just wishful thinking? Because sometimes my gut feeling tells me I absolutely need that extra slice of pizza, and I'm pretty sure that's just my stomach talking, not God.
Huh. That's a fair point, definitely. And that's why you need more than just the feeling. That brings us to the second signal, the timely word. This is when maybe you're reading the Bible, perhaps a verse you've seen tons of times before. Let's say Jeremiah 29:11 about God having plans for you. And suddenly, whoa, those words just seem to light up. They feel incredibly relevant, like they were written just for what you're going through right then, whether it's worrying about the future or feeling bad about messing something up. That moment of clarity, that sense of, oh, this is for me right now, that's often God using his written word to speak directly.
Okay, I get that. It's like hearing a random song on the radio versus hearing your song, the one you desperately needed to hear, right at that perfect moment.
Exactly. Perfect analogy. And the third subtle signal often involves other people. Maybe you're really struggling with, say, a conflict with a friend. You're stuck. Then, totally out of the blue, a mentor or maybe a trusted friend who doesn't even know about that specific problem says something. And their words just perfectly hit the nail on the head. They give you the insight or clarity you were missing. They weren't even trying to solve your problem, but boom, perspective shift.
Okay, so the big takeaway here seems to be God is still talking. That's a definite yes. But maybe he's not shouting over all the noise. He's sending these tailored signals, these nudges, these timely words designed to cut through the chaos if we're actually listening. These aren't just random coincidences.
Not usually, no. They're potential patterns, potential ways God is guiding you, getting your attention.
Okay, this is good. Let's dig deeper then in segment 2. The three primary channels. We've talked about the subtle stuff, the whispers. But what about, like, the active things we can do, the homework. If we're not just waiting passively for that supernatural text, what are the main ways, the sort of established channels we can use to practice hearing him more consistently?
Yeah, we can definitely think about it in terms of channels. Three main ones that really work together. The absolute foundation, channel number one, is Scripture, the Bible. If you want to get familiar with what God sounds like, what his character is like, what he promises, you have to spend time with what he's already clearly said. It's like his user manual for life, maybe his character revealed. But here's the challenge, especially maybe when you're younger. Don't treat the Bible like a magic 8 ball, right? Just flipping it open, pointing randomly, expecting an instant answer for today. To really hear his voice through Scripture, you got to read it to understand. Understand the context, his big story, his character shown over time. Then, when you know that foundation, a specific verse or passage might suddenly light up and apply perfectly to your situation right now. It's that illumination of something familiar that's often his voice speaking through the text.
Right, so it's not just reading words on a page. It's like actively searching for understanding. Okay, got it. Channel 2, you mentioned prayer earlier. Most people think of prayer as, us talking to God. Listing our requests, our worries. But for it to be a channel for hearing, it has to be more than just talking, right? There has to be listening involved.
Oh, absolutely. It must involve listening. Prayer is meant to be that direct line, but communication needs two sides, doesn't it? And the listening part, well, it requires stillness. And honestly, that might be the hardest thing to do in our super connected, always on digital world. It means actually quieting down inside. Turning off the mental noise, the homework list, the social media reel, the friend drama replays, and genuinely asking God, okay, what do you want to say to my heart or mind right now? And it's often in those quiet moments, maybe just 5 minutes before you fall asleep, or when you're walking home alone, maybe with music off for a change. That's when you might sense an idea pop into your head, or feel a gentle redirection, or maybe just a deep sense of peace about something that was stressing you out. A peace that feels, well, different. Like it didn't just come from you trying to calm yourself down. That peace, the Bible talks about it in Philippians 4.7, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. That kind of deep down calm is often a sign he's communicating.
Okay, so we have Scripture, the written word, and prayer, that quiet two-way conversation. What's the third main channel?
The third is wise counsel. God, very intentionally, uses other people in our lives. Think mentors, parents, maybe a youth pastor, friends who are a bit further along in their faith journey. He uses them to speak truth and bring clarity, especially when we're wrestling with big stuff. Like if you're trying to decide where to apply to college or how to handle a really tricky ethical situation at school, getting advice from people who you see living out God's character, that can be incredibly helpful, indispensable, really.
Okay, but I got to push back a little here. This is
Yeah.
important. What if you get conflicting advice? Like, what if you talk to two really godly people you trust, and one says, definitely go for that opportunity, and the other says, no way, stay put? That feels
Yeah.
super confusing, maybe even paralyzing.
Yeah, that definitely happens. And that's where the channels have to work together. It's a system. Any advice you get from people, no matter how wise they seem, has to be filtered through channel one. Scripture. Does the advice line up with what the Bible clearly teaches about God's character, about right and wrong? If it contradicts the Bible, then, well, it's out. Simple as that. But if both pieces of advice are, biblically okay, like one person thinks college A is better, the other thinks college B is better, then you move into discernment. Which brings us to our next segment, really. You weigh the counsel you received. You take it back to channel 2, quiet prayer. You listen for that sense of peace we talked about, and you look at the potential fruit of each option. Which choice seems more likely to lead to good things, things that align with growing your faith and integrity?
Okay, that makes sense. It's like checks and balances. That leads us perfectly into the last big question, segment 3, the authenticity check. This is where it gets really tricky sometimes, doesn't it? How do you actually know if that nudge or that verse that jumped out or that feeling of peace, how do you know it's really God and not just, you talking to yourself? Or confirmation bias, wanting something to be true, or maybe even like a negative influence trying to mess with you.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the anchor point goes right back to what Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. Recognition comes from relationship, from familiarity. Because you're getting to know the shepherd, you start to recognize his voice. And crucially, his voice will always align with his character, as revealed in Scripture. Always. This gives us a kind of character test, a non-negotiable filter. God's communication, what you sense from him, it will always be, number one, loving. Now, it might be challenging, it might call you to change, but it will never be condemning, cruel, or meant to tear you down. Number two, it will always be true. It will line up with the truth already revealed in the Bible. It won't contradict his established word. And number three, it will always point you towards what is good and right. It inspires you towards integrity, towards faith, towards becoming more like him, towards growth.
Okay, so that's a really clear filter. If that inner voice or feeling is pushing you towards something sketchy or making you feel intense panic and confusion or telling you to just ignore something the Bible clearly says, that's a massive red flag, right? That's not his voice.
Exactly. Huge red flag. His communication might bring conviction. That's like a loving realization. Oops, I messed up there. I need to change this. But the end result, the underlying tone, is peace and clarity and hope, not chaos or fear. Fear, confusion, anxiety, those are usually counter signals. The more time you spend immersing yourself in the word, in prayer, the more sensitive your internal spiritual tuning fork becomes. You get better at recognizing the frequency of his peace.
So really, this whole deep dive, it kind of boils down to this. It's less about waiting for some big, dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime sign and more about the daily grind, right? Cultivating that relationship every day through reading the Bible, through trying to listen in prayer, through talking with wise people, so that recognizing his voice just becomes more like second nature.
That's it, exactly. It's about practicing listening in the quiet moments, however brief they might be. And that practice, it takes time. It takes patience. So please, don't get discouraged if you feel like you're not hearing God loudly or clearly all the time, especially right away. Just keep showing up. Keep seeking him through those reliable channels we talked about. Scripture, prayer, wise counsel. Trust that he is speaking, he wants to communicate, and he absolutely wants to walk with you through everything, every single day.
Wow, this has been super helpful. Really practical ways to think about connecting with God today. So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on this week. What's maybe just one small habit of quiet, of stillness that you could try to build into your typically noisy routine? Just one thing that might open the door, even a tiny crack wider, to hearing that still small voice more clearly. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into God's DMs. We really hope you found some solid steps for listening better today. And hey, be sure to follow our podcast so you don't miss future episodes where we tackle more big questions.